find a job that you're passionate about, that when Monday hits, you're ready to hit the ground running and you want to get to it. And then build a family life that is such a refreshment and joy that when Friday hits, you can't wait for the weekend to spend time with your wife and kids.
Welcome to Jesus in the Upper Left, where we're talking about gospel multiplication in the Pacific Northwest.
Hey, welcome back to Jesus in the Upper Left. We are excited to be with you here in the new year as we're just talking about things that are relevant to what Jesus is up to in the Pacific Northwest. And my name is Gabe Kolstad from Westside Community Church. I'm here with Ahshuwah Hawthorne from Brilliance Labs. How's it going, Ahshuwah?
Doing well. It's good to see you guys again. It's been a little while.
Likewise. And Tim Osborne from Western Seminary and Missio Church. How's it going, Tim?
It's going great. Good to be here.
Good. You look tan like you've been in Mexico.
Nope, just a tanning booth. No, I was in Mexico.
What?
I was in Mexico. Yes. Where else to spend Christmas? Yes.
Yeah. Well, while the rest of us were eating some, traditional dish, you were probably having enchiladas. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Feliz Navidad.
They were delicious.
Oh, I bet. We're remarking the other day about something that's going on, and so we're going to bring a topic that recently bubbled up in a conversation. And Ahshuwah, I want to have you go ahead and introduce what you noticed and what that kind of triggered in our thoughts.
Yeah. So if our listeners don't know, so Brilliance Labs, one of our primary missions and purposes is to fund new kingdom ventures here in the city of Portland. And so we do these micro grants. We run two different rounds of granting, one in the spring, one in the fall. And I was going over our applications from this last fall, and we had 25 different applications from different ministries throughout the city of Portland, some churches, but mostly just nonprofits. And what struck me was that the vast majority of them, I would say over 80% of these 25 ministries serve at-risk women and children. And it's kind of a whole gambit of these things, whether it's foster care, whether it's refugees, whether it's domestic violence, homelessness, like whatever the dysfunction or the marginalization or the suffering is, the thing that they all have in common is it's women and children. And so what struck me as we're going through this, and we ended up funding 7 of these ministries, and we're stoked for the groups that we get a partnership, groups like Relife, Northwest, the Portland Central Young Life, Echo Ranch, Divine Threads. This is awesome ministries. I'm happy to shout out and send our listeners to support and get involved with. But it just totally struck me that it's women and children, and there's this analogy. It comes from a book called Upstream, and it's this picture of a village where this newcomer comes, and they go to the village, and they see all the people are at a river, and they're all working hard, and they go closer to see what they're doing, and they realize what they're doing is they're pulling babies out of the river, that they're coming down in these little little rafts or something, and they're eventually drowning in the river. And so they've developed all these different strategies to get babies out of the river. Some people fish them out with nets, other people have their boats, and they're doing all these different things to get the babies out of the river. But then he asks, why are there babies in the river? And they say, well, we don't know, but we work very hard and diligent to get them out of the river. And he asks, well, what if we went upstream and we found out who or what was putting babies in the river? And sure enough, they go upstream, and he's like, okay, there's the problem. Let's fix the problem. Let's stop the jerk, this guy that keeps throwing babies in the river. And you stop that, and now all of a sudden you don't have a job anymore. All the people downstream can go do other things that are fruitful and beneficial because there's no babies in the river. And it just struck me that there's got to be something upstream of this.
Yeah.
And people can argue causation, correlation, and this is the problem in our society. This is why there's this, all that. But I just kind of took the logical steps back in my own life, having been raised by a single mom on welfare, a deadbeat dad, and kind of set up in a path of I mean, a lot of dysfunction, and then Jesus saves me out of that. And it's a long story of how I got to where I am today, but just seeing God's redemptive story in my life and recognizing that when one more illustration and then we'll start the conversation is so you have these women and children and they're broken, and you have these great ministries that are serving them to fix the problem, trying to make it better. And I thought to myself, would this woman that's going to this service, let's say, and getting some services provided for them, or let's say this foster kid who has help as he's going through the foster care system, would they rather have a better funded social service, even if it's a Christian ministry, or would they rather have a loving dad, like their actual dad in the picture caring for them? What would the woman rather have? Oh, yes, I have my enough food benefits and a low income housing from my like apartment I can live in, or would they rather have like a faithful, godly husband that cares for them and supports them and partners with them on their on life and mission and provides and protects? And I think, I mean, apart from some other kind of relational dysfunction and the trust issues we might have, I think all the kids would rather pick a dad than like a social service worker, and the woman would rather have a faithful, loving husband than be able to wait in line and get someone to meet a monetary need that they have. And so I'm like, okay, how do we get men back in the picture? Why aren't they in the picture? And I'm like, I think my theory is upstream of 90% of these challenges that we see that ministries are working to solve get solved when dudes are walking with Jesus, providing and protecting for their households, being faithful in marriage and in fatherhood. And we experience blessing. We experience the flourishing that God promises in His Word.
I mean, that pretty much says it all. So we're gonna make that the end of the podcast today. So but it's
good and short.
Like, I mean that stirs up a lot in me, and it's why when we first talked about this, I think all of us were like, yeah, we should tease this out a little bit with the city because, man. We've all watched the stats. For one thing, we've all seen the stats about men are returning to church. So it does seem like it's prime time for us to go, well, how do we accelerate and even guide some of this movement back? There certainly is a hunger in men that's elevated beyond what it was, a spiritual hunger in our city as well as around the country and around the world. So maybe it's not just us going, boy, we sure wish men would rise to the occasion of their calling, but maybe the Lord is also, pouring out His Spirit in that way, and we could partner with Him in that. I'm excited to see what comes of the conversation, but also to just talk more with you guys about it. Tim, how does this conversation hit you?
Well, when Ahshuwah first shared that, it was like, it was so helpful because I think we often are looking at what hits us right in front of the face, right, what's right there. So when somebody applies for a grant for helping women and children, we jump at it and we go, okay, like how can we give more, and how can we make the need more known? But thinking upstream is so helpful to understand. Like that's just a brutal and clear picture of getting babies out of the river. Like, duh, go get the jerk upstream and deal with that. And so. So just inspired of like the need and the issue of men, and more specifically masculinity in our culture is, I think the technical word is an utter mess. Probably, like we just don't know what to do. It is like, I know you've raised sons. Ahshuwah, you have, like so many kids, you have to have some boys in there. So you might have more boys than Gabe and I put together. I've raised now 3 adult sons. Like the challenge of raising young men in this culture is a worthy challenge, and it's very complicated. And particularly when I say this culture, meaning specifically the Northwest in particular. And so I think as you started, Gabe, like we want to talk about this for several weeks because it is so complex, confusing, sensitive, touchy, uncomfortable maybe, and absolutely necessary that we bring a biblical perspective and a missional call to what it means to not just be a follower of Jesus, but to be a man who's following Jesus in this culture, and what that can do to serve those that are in your sphere would be unmeasurable. I mean, I think the potential is huge. So.
Yeah, and I mean, how did we get to the mess that we're in? That's the complicated part. And then how do we get out of it? I think this is very personal for me because in my own family tree, similar to Ahshuwah, there were some challenges with example setting and addiction, abuse, etc. Not my father, but my grandfather was a monster, and it set a very, very difficult tone for our family because a lot of that stuff followed, and there was plenty of drama and trauma from it, and and then though I believe my dad is a sincere follower of Jesus, not everything's perfect in every family or in any family. And so there were plenty of times where there's just these disconnects, right? And I think for me, my personal experience has been trying my best to start fresh with what seems like the biblical, call for a man in a family as a follower of Jesus, knowing I'm also going to do this imperfectly. And so I'm going to unfortunately hand off some of the wrong things to my sons, not knowingly, but I'm sure they're going to at sometime they're going to be on some podcast going, well, Dad tried, but there were some things, and so there's this choice that I think guys have to make. But if they don't see the model, that's the problem. If they don't see the model, how can they make it? So to me, what I'm noticing right now, where we're seeing momentum, maybe I'll just speak to my own ministry context. We're seeing a lot of momentum with this particular topic because the modeling is being shown and shared. And so there's a rapid, and I mean a rapid embrace of biblical masculinity, servant leadership, repentance, stuff happening that I just never seen before. So when this topic came up, I was like, man, I'd love to talk about this because I've never in my entire life seen it happen this fast. And it's intriguing and it's encouraging. And I also want to understand it more because I always look at this stuff and go like, man, there could be this season where we look back and we're like, remember that one 3-month period when all those guys, decided to turn to Jesus and there was that bright light. Remember that? I hope that's not the way we talk about it. We're in the 5 years. I hope it's like, remember when things turned around and there was this strong, uprising of real Christian men doing the things that Christian men are supposed to do. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder if we can start by both defining our terms and defining the problem. So Tim, a couple times you've mentioned Nancy Pearcey's new book, The Toxic War on Masculinity. Mm-hmm. I haven't got through it yet, though I've read some of her tweets and her highlights on it. I wonder, could you share a basic thought from her and your own study of both a definition of masculinity and, she kind of plays on this toxic masculinity idea that I think she's arguing that actually masculinity it's being made to be the problem, and it's not the problem, that there's a war on true masculinity that we need to recognize and fight against. So what is biblical masculinity and what is this cultural war on it?
I remember when it first came out, I just could not, or she first mentioned that it was on its way and just could not wait to get it. And so I ate it up as soon as I got my hands on it. And so one of the things that, and if you're not familiar with Nancy Pearcey, she's only written a handful of books and they are all gold. Toxic War on Masculinity is the most recent. Love Thy Body was before that. How Now Can We Live, or co-wrote something like that, or in Total Truth. And I don't remember what else, but it's just gold. She's just fantastic. She's extremely sharp, humble, just great. So she tackles this topic of masculinity. One of the things she does really effectively is break out. It's not that we have a problem with men, it's that we have a problem with the good man, or the real man, or the good man and the bad man, or even what is a good man has gotten lost. So here's just one kind of helpful beginning. Ideally, the good man should always be the real man, but in today's secular culture, the two have become decoupled. My goal in this book is to ask how the two scripts were split apart. We will be effective in countering the secular script for men only if we understand where it came from and how it developed. And so she's basically saying we have a cultural script or narrative of what it means to be a man, and that is not the same as what it means to be a man or the good man according to Scripture. And so that's in the intro on page 20. So that was really helpful. So chapter 1, page 20. So she just kind of points to, with a lot of it's an easy starting place to start with, say a feminist perspective, or, there's multiple ways to define that depending which stream you take, but a feminist perspective that is anti-male in some way. And she's saying, well, it's not, we can't be anti-male or anti-female. We can be against a poor demonstration or a poor embodiment of what it means to be a man or a woman, but men and women are created by God and we need both. And so she's trying to pull back and go, what is it that is a biblical good man, and to separate that from this kind of, hey, in culture that kind of, and there's obviously, this is like, we're inundated with this today. This is what it means to be a real man, and kind of some cartoonish version of what masculinity is, that's not healthy or helps all people to flourish, that it's a selfish, self-indulgent issue of power and strength and those kinds of things alone, and not a full. So that's kind of where she starts, and trying to trace back to the problem. I think in terms of what is I don't have well, actually, that's not totally true. I started doing something with my boys. I'm going to forget the book, but it's are you familiar with the book, How to Raise a Modern Day Knight?
Yeah, I was thinking you were going to go there.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
a great book, Robert Lewis. Yeah.
Robert Lewis. Thank you. Robert Lewis is a pastor, great personal story, talks about his own kind of father wound and background. But I got a hold of that, 25 years ago, and took some inspiration from that and how I parented my three sons. And so he inspired me to start with a definition of manhood, which I am embarrassed to admit I can't fully recite. But what I could do is I was very clear with my sons, and I started at my oldest was 6 years old. And I remember reading that book and then taking them out for donuts and saying, hey, my job is to help you grow and to be a godly man. That's my job description. As your dad, that's my job description. And what that means is, and I had a few handles, and one of them was to take initiative, that a man is one who takes initiative, and that's not in counter to a woman. So this isn't in a counterbalance to what it means to be female. I'm just talking about what it means to be male, to have an identity as a male, and how important that was to not just always. So the difference between passivity and healthy action, to take initiative, to pursue Jesus. And then we started that early too, talking about what it meant to be, to respect women, respect all people, but respect women. And so there's these few handles that we just were made part of the regular ongoing conversation of, hey, you're a boy, you're not a girl. Like, and oh, you have a brother. And this was before our third son was born, but it was very clear, like, okay, like I gotta figure this out as a dad. Like, what does it mean? I'm still wrestling with becoming a man myself, but I've now procreated. I've made a couple babies. I got to figure out what it means to raise these two. They're both boys, and so I need to figure out what it means to start pointing them not just towards Jesus. That's most important, but Jesus has made them men, and so what does that mean? And to start to have that part of our regular ongoing conversation and calling. That's part of who God's calling you to be and made you to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think of the, idea of multiplying the gospel in the Pacific Northwest, which I know a lot of our listeners are interested in, leaning in, you're part of that. And to me, the breakdown of male spiritual leadership has been one of the problems that we faced in our region. And I mean, you can go back to one of the very first episodes of this podcast where Renee Boucher is unpacking the spiritual history of Portland. And that's all over that. It's like the spiritual brokenness of Portland is tied to the spiritual brokenness of men. And so we can only hope that now, with a resurgence in hunger for Jesus from men in our region, that we can see a turnaround in some of that spiritual brokenness, I hope. And I think, Ahshuwah, you're onto something with going, like, man, upstream of a lot of what's not working right is guys dropping the ball. And it's just good that we own that and go, what do we do differently, to accurately reflect Jesus in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to that one of those early episodes and just that history of Portland, so much of the industry was built around entertaining single men, right? So you had the loggers, you had the sailors, you had the gold miners, and these guys would come from like months at sea, months away in the woods or in the mines, and then they have pockets full of money and free time, and they had come west, and so without families. And so you have all these industries. You have the sex industry, you have the alcohol industry, you have the Shanghaiing human trafficking industry. You have all these things that grew up around essentially leeching off of these young unattached men. And then you even see the difference in downtown Portland, the west side, east side. The west side is where the Christian families settled, and you see what the West looks like. And then the east side and the downtown is where all the single men were, and where all the opportunist businesses built around these single men. And so that, for me, that kind of begs the question is, like, what role does marriage have in the sanctifying of men and the, like, helping them grow up? And it's like, yeah, like the married dude that shows up in Portland, right? The wife sees, oh, what's going on in the Pearl District, and she's like, we're not living there. I'm not going to raise my babies there. We're going to go up on the hills. But if he's a single dude, hey, maybe it's a quicker trip to the pub. And so the role of women in the sanctifying influence on men, and I feel like, but that's like hard to talk about too. And I really would love to, hear your guys' wisdom on how like in the Psalms talk about the blessed man who has his wife is a fruitful vine, and all his kids are like shoots around the table. And the Psalm was maybe 138, or and it's like, hey, the happy is this man, blessed is this man. Here's what it looks like: the man blessed by the Lord, and it's a family guy. And I want to lift that up. I've experienced that in my life, and God's redemptive power in family life, and being a husband and father, and the role of my wife in sanctifying me. But then at the same time, like, it's one of those things where God says, this is a blessing, right? He who finds a wife finds a good thing. Um, and having children are a blessing. And yet it's something outside of our ultimate control, right? I can say I want a wife, or a woman could say, well, she would love to have a husband, but what do you say to the 40-year-old single woman who's like, I don't see any godly men, or they don't take notice of me? And what do you say to the married couple that is infertile and can't have kids? Like there's these aspects of family life that are outside of our control, can come with shame and wounds because like we hoped for one thing and it turned out another way. You have the divorcee who like just he thought he had the perfect marriage and then it just blew up in his face and now he's trying to reconstruct his life. How do you lift up these godly values and the institution of marriage and and child rearing and family life while dealing with all of the jacked upness of, because we're downstream of radical feminism, of like abortion and birth control on demand, and just so many, just there's so much junk in the water around family in our culture. How do we lift up what's good and beautiful while not ostracizing the singles and the other people in our church that aren't there?
I mean, I think it's almost in what you just said, because I think when you lift up family as a value without the right model, that's what to me becomes repulsive to people who haven't seen that model, who haven't seen the Jesus model of it. But if what you're doing is saying, we're gonna shine the light of, you know, the things that God has taught us to do, and we're gonna not position ourselves as better than. We're not saying marriage is better than not marriage. We're not saying singleness is bad. We're not saying there, but it's going. But how do we shine the light of the good that is in families? I think it becomes attractive. That's been my experience as a pastor. There's my wife and I are constantly fielding conversations from singles, couples, doesn't matter, about our date nights. I mean, it's just like this constant conversation every single week. They're like, where do you go? Where should we go eat? All these things. And my wife is constantly posting about food we eat. So everybody thinks all we do is go out to eat every single day, but there's just no end to believers, non-believers, single, married, doesn't matter. They're intrigued with, why do you guys still like each other after 30 years, and how do you do that? And so I don't think we've given this kind of Jesus model a fair chance as much. And when we do, it's very winsome. As somebody said that word earlier, it's very winsome, I think. And so I think that the magnet's already there. It's just we gotta live it out. And that, to me, that's the commitment of, like, if you're a dude listening to this, or if you're leading a ministry that's serving men, or if you're wondering how do we make it better, it seems it comes back to, like, well, the guys got to do what the guys are supposed to do, and that's a big part of the solution. It's like, this is not rocket science, right? But it's very difficult, because so much is ingrained so deeply in the other direction. And then culturally, if there's been misunderstandings, or if there's been really bad examples, of course, that's going to continue to be on the front page.
Mm-hmm. I thought of the word flourishing. I think you said that at the very beginning, Ahshuwah, and I think that's part of what we're talking about. Like, how do people flourish? How do families flourish? And man, your microphone is so good, Ahshuwah. I want that. Like, I felt like I was inside your coffee cup right then, swimming around, about to.
Well,
It's like this is a humble brag for Ahshuwah. Just that. That's it. That's just doing that. Like, right. Oh my gosh, I want that. There you go.
you need a refill.
I'll send you the Amazon link. It's the
Oh,
shirt.
oh, I know exactly what it is. I just can't afford it. I want one. No, like as you're saying that, Gabe, I'm just like the flourishing is like it's just like an anti-Satan term. Like Satan is trying to have all things die and degrade and crumble and break apart, and God is trying to grow and heal and cause everything to thrive and to flourish. And so when you look inside of a person, and let's just take a male for a minute, like all of the parts of a young adult male today that are not flourishing, it's all of it. It's not like just, it's not just part. It's not, we like to say like, help me with dating. And it's like, well, we can't talk about dating until we talk about desire. Like your desires are so messed up until you get your desires in order. We can't even start fantasizing about dating until you're aware to some degree of your desires. And then we live in this water where sacrifice is anathema. Like, I don't want to sacrifice anything. Well, then don't get married. Like, you're dumb. If you want to get married and not sacrifice, like you're don't like you're upside down, you're backwards. Like, that's not going to work. And so and then to have kids. Like, I remember a young adult guy who, and this story is told over and over and over again, but thriving career, good money, decides to get married, like here in Portland. And so, nice apartment and got plenty of time to play video games and has a nice car and all the nice toys, and then gets married. And then that works out because, she fits into his life well enough, and they do, that works. He can sacrifice that. But then he has a kid. And then he starts to question everything about life. Like, I don't know if this is worth it. I don't know if that, it's like, what did you think was going to happen? Like this is hard. So Ahshuwah, you talk about like a family and a blessing, and we're talking about like boys in men's bodies that are like, why do I have to work hard? Why do I have to meet your needs? Why do I have to lay my own life down? Why do I have to sacrifice? Why do I have to be uncomfortable? Why do I have to adjust to serve my kid? And like, you're like, whoa, like you got to back all that up. And so there's a real heart issue that impedes our flourishing. And I think a lot of it has to do with desire and with what do we want and what are we going after? And that is so, until we can learn to identify and surrender that to Jesus, then just being a man's really hard.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking, Tim, I was reflecting back at Ahshuwah's things about the early Portland days, and almost like if the industry was then preying on the base desires of men, and like that's just the easiest business you could ever have.
Easy, yes.
And what I notice is that it's like that's men being under-purposed, where it's like their purpose is so low. It's like C.S. Lewis's thing about, we're content to make mud pies, and because we can't imagine what a vacation at sea would be like. And I feel like that's a big part of the solution here, is to help guys understand their purpose is so much more noble. It's so much higher. It's like yesterday was my day off, and we got a call from our niece who has 2 young kids, and she had to go to the doctor, and her husband's at work. So she's like, hey, could you guys come over and watch the girls, 1-year-old and 5-year-old, for a few hours, because I have no other solution. Something in me just leapt. I was like, for some reason, so excited that we could fulfill a need for her, and we got to go over, and I'm giving my 5-year-old niece a horsey back ride, over to the playground, and just being like this human punching bag for a while. And I don't know why that was so much fun. It's like, it's like you look at it like, oh, my day off got interrupted, but my day off got better because I got to serve a purpose that was higher than myself. And there was something very, I don't know, transformative about that. And I think that those sorts of opportunities can help guys realize what impact they could have in the world, and that being, called up, to purpose.
Well, and those 2 words, like you said, I think you used the term base, like our base desires. And that's what I found over and over, is like there's a presenting desire. And so going back to early Portland, which mirrors this Portland, the terms are slightly different, but strip club, bar, whatever it is, like those are base desires. So yeah, you can feed those. Those are easily accessible anytime, you can meet those. But there's a deeper desire that actually, about, it's in there.
Yeah.
It's just deeper, and you've got to push through a little bit to find it and then lean into that. And then those other things become much, much more peripheral. And then you actually begin to forget about them. They don't always fully go away, but they get really far away. And that's the calling part, is like, oh, there's something deeper in there that you actually long for. And because that on face value, that sounds, to some people, that sounds horrendous. You just spent your day off like crawling around on your hands and knees giving a horsey back ride. Like, what the heck? Like, you could be playing golf, you could be sleeping, you could be drinking, watching a movie. Like, you did what? But when your face lights up and you tell that story, they're like, oh wait, what? There's something else there.
Yeah. Yeah. That was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys are right that you have to both confront the deeper idol, this selfishness and autonomy, right? And hey, you're the center of the universe, so of course, why would I want to live for another person? And then multiply other little people that now I have to live for all of them too, and meet all of their needs and put all of their needs before myself. Like, I have 8 kids, so I'm like last of 10. Right? There's just a lot of pouring out. And so it's to somehow think, okay, that's the good life. Well, it's kind of cool how God, he like, it's not a bait and switch. It's the right kind of bait and switch, because you see that beautiful girl across the room in college, and you're like, I want to end up with her. Right? And there's chemistry and there's attraction, and you get to know her, and you're like, wow, this is great. And you start dreaming about life, and you get married, right? And then reality hits the fan, and you have challenges, and you realize, I'm pretty different than this other person that I'm trying to live with now. And I'm actually pretty selfish. And then you start having kids, and they're like lovable and cute, and it's so fun. And then, like, true story, like, they keep you up half the night. That's me last night. And my kid's already going on 11 months old, and it's still, when they get sick, it gets harder. Like, so you're just put to the end of yourself. But it's like, that's where God wants you to be. That's where you're like, I don't think I can get through this day. Like, I'm exhausted. And then God's Spirit shows up. I have to ask for help. We're drawn together as we rely on his people, on our family and one another. And it's like, that's where he wants to get us there. And I've been thinking about this. There's this really confusing text in, was it 1 Timothy, and it's some of those debated passages about men and women and roles in the church and marriage. But it says, and the woman shall be saved through childbearing. And it's this strange passage, and we debated, and I'm not going to be dogmatic about what I think it means, but sozo, right, in Greek doesn't mean justification by faith, salvation from hell. It's a very broad term. It's the same term used in Mark's gospel when a blind guy's healed, when the lame is healed. He got sozoed. It's a very broad term. And so it can easily encompass sanctification, transformation, growth, maturity, and ultimate salvation. But it's like, whether or not this is what the text means, childbearing and raising kids is a part of my salvation. Like, I am being saved through childbearing. My wife is experiencing that, right? As she is being sanctified and challenged, and God, he does work it for good, but it certainly requires, and then tying back to what you guys said, it's getting to the idol of selfishness and then casting a vision of the good life. Like, dude, that picture, like, of family life and having it be wholesome, and the whole saying of like, hey, you want to, like, I was sharing this with my sons. My oldest is 13. So the girls are older, but then the boys are in the middle. Is like, hey, find a job that you're passionate about, that when Monday hits, you're ready to hit the ground running and you want to get to it. And then build a family life that is such a refreshment and joy that when Friday hits, you can't wait for the weekend to spend time with your wife and kids. And like for me, that's a vision of the good life, is fruitful vocation that you want to get to on Monday, and a restful, joyful family life that you can't wait to clock out on Friday so you can be with the family.
That's powerful. Good vision to end this episode with.
Wow.
We're going to continue the conversation over the next few weeks, so we hope you'll jump back in with us. And I think we got some good surprises up our sleeves for what's next. So thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Jesus in the Upper Left. We want to ask you a quick favor. Would you please subscribe so you don't miss a single episode, and share with those that are in your life that might benefit from the content. Hit the notifications button, rate and review, of course, and then head on over to upperleftshow.com where you can find bonus content, opportunities to connect with those around the city that are doing similar work as you, resources to help you, and just a way to connect to the community. We hope to see you again next time.